Good evening. Okay, so for this week, Bezrat Hashem, we're gonna do Hilchot Purim, and then the following time we'll do a couple of sessions, hopefully on Hilchot Pesach. Okay, so first thing is before actual Purim, there's a couple of other things that we need to be aware of. Number one is the Shabbat before Purim. What happens on Shabbat before Purim? We read Parshat Zachor, right? So just the idea of Parshat Zachor is to remember. The Torah says, Zechor et asher asa lecha Amalek. You have to remember what Amalek did to you, that Amalek came out against Am Yisrael and kind of cooled them down, as the Pasuk says. So remember really means in your mind, but the Gemara makes a drasha. The Pasuk says, Lo tishkach, don't forget it, and it also says Zachor. So since it says don't forget it, obviously when it says Zachor, it must mean to mention it with your verbally to remember. So we have a mitzvah. Many hold it's a mitzvah deoraita to verbally to read Parshat Zachor, and a mitzvah to hear for those who cannot read. Now the question is just the Torah obligation has nothing to do with Purim. A person could hear Parshat Zachor whenever. The reason we do it before Purim is because Haman came from Amalek. Zachor is all about wiping out, erasing the remnant memory of Amalek. So that's why we read it before Purim, because Haman came from Amalek. Now, big question is, what's the deal with women? Are women chayav? Are women peturot? Are they chayavot? What's the deal? So, on the one hand, some say that women are obligated to hear Parshat Zachor, and the idea is because we know there's a rule that what type of mitzvah are women peturot from? Mitzvah raseh shehazman grama. Any time-bound mitzvah, women are peturot from. But this mitzvah, even though we happen to do it before Purim, technically it's not time-bound. So therefore, there are those that say that women are obligated. On the flip side, there are poskim that say that women are peturot. So why would women be peturot? Why would women not be obligated? So there are various different reasons brought down. Some say because the whole mitzvah is to wipe out Amalek, which is something that has to do with battle and war, and women are not obligated in such things, therefore they're not obligated to hear Parshat Zachor. Others say other reasons, but at the end of the day it's a machloket. So practically the halacha is that if a woman is able to make it, if she can make it, she should make it. She should make the effort to make it, because many hold that women are obligated. However, if there's any reason that a woman cannot make it, for example, she's at the stage of life where she has little children at home and it's very hard to schlep out all the way to shul, she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to kill herself to do it, but a woman should try to do it. Okay, next is before Purim, we have Ta'anit Esther. Ta'anit Esther is on Yud Gimel Adar. It's on the 13th of Adar, which this year is Shabbat. When it falls out on Shabbat, you don't push it off to Friday, you actually push it off to Thursday. So Ta'anit Esther this year is going to be Thursday. What is Ta'anit Esther? So there's different ideas brought down in the Midrashim, two different ideas brought down why we fast. One is that we know that Esther fasted prior to going into Achashverosh's chambers after not being called to visit him for a very long time. She was very scared, because if you go in and the king doesn't accept you as a visitor, then you're dead. So Esther was very scared. She fasted, she prayed, she fasted for 3 days actually. So that's one of the reasons brought down for Ta'anit Esther. Now, happens to be Esther's fast, where she went to visit Achashverosh, was months before Purim. But nevertheless, we observe it at that time. That's one understanding of Ta'anit Esther. The other understanding of Ta'anit Esther, which is a more common understanding, is that day, the 13th of Adar, was supposed to be the day. That was the day where there was an edict for all the Jews to be annihilated. So because that day there was an edict for all the Jews to be annihilated, and the Jews were at the end of the day, given permission to stand up for themselves and to fight back. They were engaged in war, so they fasted and they did teshuvah on that day, and obviously their teshuvah was accepted. So that's why we fast on that day, because it was a day of war, and it was a day of fasting and teshuvah for Am Yisrael. So we mentioned this year the fast is pushed off till Thursday. The halacha is that anyone who's pregnant or nursing does not need to fast. If someone chas v'shalom had a miscarriage, also they don't need to fast within a certain amount of time after the miscarriage, 30 days after the miscarriage. but pregnant or nursing does not need to fast. Nursing is a machloket. Some say nursing means as long as she's actively nursing. Some say nursing means and within 24 months of giving birth. So the Rovadia says that if it comes out of the halacha that if a woman has a hard time fasting, then within 24 months she doesn't have to. If she's the type of person that just fasting is not such a big deal for her, then if she's not actively nursing anymore and it's within 24 months, she should try to fast. But again, a person who, especially if somebody has a very hard time fasting, you could rely on those that say within 24 months after having a child, that's considered nursing, you don't have to fast. Okay, so that's all pre-Purim. There is also another halacha, machatzira shekel, that there's a minhag to give machatzira shekel, comes out to 9 grams of pure silver for zecher la machatzira shekel. Sometime before Purim, that's more the husband gives. It's really for men 20 and above. However, the minhag is to give even for women, even for children, and I guess we'll see if we have time to at the end we'll elaborate more on that because there's a lot of other things I want to get to. Okay, so for Purim itself, we have 4 main mitzvot that have to do with the day of Purim, and the key is that they all begin with the letter Mem. Right? There's Megillah, Mikra Megillah. There's Mishloach Mano, Matanot Le'Evyonim, and Mishteh, Seudah or Mishteh, having a feast. So all of these mitzvot, women are also obligated in. Women are obligated to hear the Megillah, the same as men, twice, once in the evening, Purim night, once in the morning. A person you're not yotze with, you have to hear it in person. You're not yotze with telephone, FaceTime, radio, any of these things. The poskim write that you're not yotze, so you can't just FaceTime into the Megillah. You have to actually physically be there to hear it with your own ears. And very important, if somebody misses one word of the Megillah, you're not yotze. So it's very, very important not to speak during the Megillah, and not to miss a word. If a person does miss a word, so you were zoning out or there was some noise, you missed a word, you can read it from the Chumash if you're fast enough and just catch up to where the Shliach Sibur, where the Baal Koreh is reading from, and listen to the rest of it. But you can't, the Megillah has to be read in order, so you can't, if you come in, you can't hear the second half of the Megillah and then wait for the next reading and just hear the first half and leave. Right? If you miss a part, you have to make sure that it's made up in order. Okay. Now the poskim write. I'm gonna read this from Rovadia himself. The poskim write that when it comes to children and hearing the Megillah, so there is an idea of being mechanech your children. However, if they're too young, it's almost it could be detrimental. We'll say in a minute. It could be really detrimental. When kids are too young, and they're coming to the Megillah and they're making ruckus and this and that, it's not only Rovadia himself writes. His words are, he says, Chet Rabim Nasa. Someone who brings children to hear the Megillah and they're either under the age of chinuch and they can't sit, or even if they're over the age of chinuch but they just can't sit and they're making a ruckus. And it's causing people not to be yotze. They're reading the Megillah. Rovadia says it's the fact that other people are not yotze and people are not going to be yotze the mitzvah is all on this individual's head. Now Rav Wolbe says this is such an unbelievable thing. When Rav Wolbe has a very, very interesting point in chinuch in general, and when I read this from Rav Wolbe, I would kind of changed my view a little bit on things. Rav Wolbe writes that Chazal say that they give different ages for to be mechanech your child for different things. At this age, you teach your child to read. At this age, you begin to teach your child Mishnah. At this age, you begin to teach your child Gemara. Right? Different ages where you teach your child something. So, what's the idea? It's just like a regimen that you have to. Not every child reads at the same age. Some kids they need an extra year or two. Some kids they read a little bit earlier. What does it mean that it's giving you at this age you have to do it? So Rav Wolbe explains it's not giving you a strict regimen. It's telling you, the Chazal are telling us a very, very important yesod in chinuch that's like super important. Chazal are telling us that there is a specific window of opportunity to give over something to your child, to be mechanech something to your child. If you do it too early, it could be detrimental, and if you do it too late, it could be detrimental. You have to do it exactly at the right time, at the right window. If somebody decides at 18 years old, now I want to teach my child how to read, that's too late. And if somebody tries to push his child to read when they're, when it's too early, the child is just not going to want to do it. This is too hard for me. I don't get it right now. I can't do it. And it becomes a burdensome task, and they're not going to want to do it. Same thing with anything that you're trying to teach your child. So Rav Wolbe himself says that when it comes to children in the Beit Knesset, he says that you can't wait. You can't, if you bring a child to the shul the first time when he's bar mitzvah, that's too late. He's not going to know what's going on. He needs to have exposure to tefillah. He needs to know what goes on in a shul. But at the same time, Rav Wolbe says if children are brought to shul too early, then that could also be detrimental because they won't have the proper appreciation for tefillah, and they won't have the proper appreciation for the what the Beit Knesset is supposed to be. So that's as far as bringing children to Kriyat HaMegillah. Okay, next thing is there's a halacha that a person cannot eat before they do a mitzvah. Anytime a person has a mitzvah and it's time to do the mitzvah, there are limitations or restrictions on what a person can eat. You can't have a full meal before doing the mitzvah. Now, usually when you're reading the Megillah right after the fast, this becomes more difficult because you're waiting to have a meal and you can only have small snacks. You can't have a full meal until after you hear the Megillah. And a lot of times you have to wait for your husband to come home from him hearing the Megillah, and it's very late. This year, we're lucky it's Mosei Shabbat, so you could have Sudah Shlishit until, until Shabbat. And then afterwards, you're not hungry before you're hearing the Megillah. But for the daytime, it also applies. You can't have a full meal before hearing the Megillah. What's a full meal? A full meal is a kabetza of bread, which is a sizable amount of bread or mizonot. But you could have other things. You have tea, coffee, fruits, other smaller snacks, things like that you could have. But a person just has to make sure not to have a full meal before reading the Megillah. And also a person should not nap before reading the Megillah. If you're up in the morning and the time for the Megillah has come, a person shouldn't nap. If it's, there are situations where, let's say someone's up all night with a baby or whatever it is, and you just need to nap. So what you can do is you can designate somebody to remind you that you have to hear the Megillah, and that way you would be allowed to take a nap. Okay, so that's as far as Kriyat HaMegillah is concerned. The next halacha on Purim is Mishloach Manot. So Mishloach Manot, the pasuk says, Mishloach Manot ish l'reu matanot levion. Mishloach Manot is plural. That means minimum 2, so 2 items. And ish l're'ehu means each individual to their friend, to somebody that they love. So that's one person. So Mishloach Manot is 2 items to 1 person. Okay, so now what are you yotze with? So there's a machloket whether you're yotze with raw foods or not. It's better to give cooked foods that are ready to eat, but technically a person could be yotze with raw foods as well, just not live, right? You're not allowed to give like a live chicken. I don't think anybody's planning on doing that, but you can't give a live animal. You could technically give raw, but it's better to give cooked, ready to be eaten items. As far as drinks are concerned, so there's also a machloket about drinks. Some say that you're not yotze with drinks. The halacha is that you are yotze with drinks. That's really what it sounds like from the Gemara. That's the halacha is that you're yotze with drinks. However, poskim do say that if you want to do it the best way, you should make sure to put 2 food items in there, and then you can put drinks also, whatever. But put 2 food items. That's the best way to be yotze the Mishloach Manot. Now, women are also obligated to give Mishloach Manot, and the post can bring down that men should give to men and women should give to the women. What needs to be given is, a lot of times people think that you need to give 2 brachot. you don't need to give two separate brachot. You just need to give two different types of things. So they could be the same bracha. You could give, I don't know, you could give chocolate and candy, or chocolate and a Pepsi, or whatever. Right? Even though they're all shakol, that's fine. They don't have to be two separate brachos. Lechatchila, the poskim bring down that it should be something that's a davar chashuv. It should be something that's important, something that's presentable. A person shouldn't be yotze with just like candy and a soda, or like, technically, you could give a fig and a date, and you're yotze mishloach mano, like a jelly bean and a whatever. But it should be something that's a davar chashuv. As to if there's a minimum size, so there's a machloket. Some don't give a minimum size. Some say that it should be at least a kezayit. And some say that no, it should be a sizable amount, something that a person would eat for a meal, like a size of a sandwich, or something that a person would eat for a meal. Now, halachically, the best thing to do is to give what's called a shiur seudah, a sizable amount, an amount that somebody would eat for the meal. But keep in mind, mishloach manot, you only really have to give one. So what I do is I try to do one that's like very mihudar, that I'm doing more chashuv food items, and making sure that there's two food items, and making sure that there's enough, that it's enough like for a seudah and whatever. Once you're yotze that one, the rest of them are just a hitter mitzvah. It's just extra. So those you could give candy and chocolate or whatever. That's what I personally try to do. One nice one for myself, and my wife will give one nice one, and then the rest of them, will be a little bit smaller, or less muhudar, if you will. You are yotze mishloach mano if a person gives to their parent. You're allowed to give to your fathers, mothers, that you're yotze, and it is brought down that person also should be mechanech their children with this mitzvah, and it's a good idea to take the children to their teachers, to their friends, or whoever. Sometimes with a lot of children, it could get pretty crazy. So whatever it is, you pick one or two people that you're going to go to for the kids, and to be mechanech them to the mitzvah of mishloach mano as well. A very important halacha that a lot of people don't know. Rav Ovadia writes that he brings down the whole purpose of mishloach manot is to create friendship and love, and this sense of communal community. People see someone leave them a mishloach manot, and they think like, wow, that person thought of me, like that person cared for me. I didn't know they would go out of their way for me to bring it for me. So it awakens these feelings of love among people. So based off of that, Rav Ovadia writes that if somebody gives a mishloach manot anonymously, they just don't write their name, they just put it in front of the guy's door, knock and run away or whatever, he says you wouldn't be yotze, because the whole point is that the person has to know that you care for them. So if you give it anonymously, a person would not be yotze. Okay, so that is mishloach manot. Next is matanot levionim. So matanot levionim, the pasuk uses that word, matanot levionim. Matanot is two, because it's plural, so minimum two, and evionim is two poor people. So you have to give two gifts to two people, one to each. So matanot levionim is we use money. A person could technically also give food, but mainly we're yotze with money. This is just tzedakah on Purim to give out. You're giving money to be given out on Purim to evionim, to two poor people. So the minimum amount that a person has to give to be yotze matanot le'evionim is a machloket. Some say you need to give at least a pruta. A pruta is going to be, whatever, 15 cents, 25 cents, whatever it is. So that's a very, very small amount. Others say that no, the minimum amount you need to give is a shiur seudah, the amount that it will cost somebody to buy something that they could have for a meal. So whatever it is, a couple slices of pizza, a falafel sandwich, whatever, $7 to $10. Now keep in mind the obligation is for the husband and for the wife. So if let's say you want to do $10 for your matanot levionim, you have to do it to two poor people, so that's going to be $20. Plus the wife also has to do it, so that's going to be another $20. So the family, the couple, would be giving $40.
How about the kids?
The kids over bar mitzvah also have to.
You have to pay for your
Yeah, the kids. You don't have to. They have a chiyuv to do it. You could be their shaliach. The parents could be their shaliach to do it. Yes.
Is it better to do it for the whole family?
You have to do it for every individual who's obligated to do it.
Okay.
It has to be given for them. So, and women are also obligated. Now, it has to be given out on Purim day. Technically, right, you could be yotze with the lesser amount, but I'll tell you what the Rambam says. The Rambam says a very, very important line. The Rambam says the whole idea of Purim, of Adar, Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. The Rambam writes the biggest simcha is helping others. The biggest simcha is giving to others. And I spoke about this one time in Shul. I brought a number of studies that prove that the happiest people are people who are givers. People who care about others. People who care for others, give to others. They're really the happiest people. The Rambam is saying real simcha is giving, not just sitting and doing your own thing. So if somebody is spending, $500 on the family for costumes and whatnot, and then they want to be yotze, matanot levyonim, like, okay, all together comes out to $5. We're each going to give a pruta, we'll give $5. There's something wrong, right? You shouldn't be spending $500 on your costumes and $5 for matanot levyonim. The Rambam writes that this is really where one of the main mitzvahs. This is where a person's money should go on Purim, to the evyonim, to helping others. So if a person's spending, the Rambam says this is more important than spending on the Seuda and spending on the other aspects of Purim, is spending on matanot levyonim. Yeah.
Is it able to come from your meiser, or should be completely separate?
Okay, so good question. So since matanot levyonim is a chiyuv, is an obligation, anything that's a chiyuv, you're not allowed to use meiser. However, you can give the minimum chiyuv and add on extra from meiser, which means if you say, let's say you want to go with the opinion that it's, let's just say $10. So for a woman and her husband to give each to two anim would be $40. So $40 wouldn't come from meiser. You could add on another whatever you want from meiser on top of it, right? So that you could do. The extra above the chiyuv could be deducted from meiser, but the main chiyuv not. Yeah.
It has to be given on Purim day. It can't be given the night.
So the actual money has to be given to the evyonim, to the poor people on Purim day, but you would give it to whoever's giving it out. Meaning if someone's directly giving it to poor people, they would give it to them on Purim day.
Right.
But a lot of times, usually there's a Rav or a Gabayim or whatever that collect, or organizations that collect for Matanot Levyonim. So you would give it to them whenever, and they would be your shaliach, your messenger, to give it out on Purim. They would give it out on Purim. Yeah.
And how do you determine the set amount again? For how much you're
They're
supposed
gonna
to do?
announce it every year.
So there's two things. One is Zecher L'Machatzira Shekel. That comes before Purim. That's a totally separate thing. Matanot Levyonim, the minimum amount to be Yotze is to give a pruta, which is like the smallest amount that you could buy something with. Let's call it 25 cents. That's the bare minimum. But according to many poskim, the minimum is the amount of money it costs to eat a meal. So that'll be a couple of slices of pizza. Let's call it $10. Pizza and a drink, whatever. It's $7 to $10, right? So if we're going with that as the minimum, that's like the baseline. There's a totally separate thing, which is Zecher L'Machatzira Shekel, which is once you brought it up. Well, Zecher L'Machatzira Shekel is in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, they would yearly have to collect half a shekel from everybody, and that money would go into a fund, and they would use that fund to bring various korbanot. So as a commemoration to that, this time of year we do machatzira shekel, and the reason we do it is the Midrash says because we do it at this time of year is because Haman weighed out his shekel, we do our shekel, which is a different thing. Our mitzvah of machatzira shekel outweighs Haman's shekel. That's what the Midrash says. But that's a totally different thing, which we give money to Torah organizations as a zecher l'machatzira shekel. That's technically, it's for men 20 and above. The minhag is to give for women also, and even even under bar mitzvah. The minhag is to give for everyone in the family. That's given before Purim, and that's the equivalent of 9 grams of pure silver, which you could ask your husband; he would know better than me. That's the so that whatever they'll every year they announce what it is.
Every day.
Yeah, they announce every year, what it is at that time, and then you give. But that's separate from matanot levyonim. Two totally separate things. Okay. Okay, fine. So that's as far as matanot levyonim. The next and final mitzvah of Purim is the seuda of Purim. So women are chayav in the seuda of Purim, just like men. Lechatchila, a person should wash and have bread. Lechatchila, should have meat. And there are poskim that say you're not yotze with chicken or with fish. You need to have actual beef. So it's good to be machmir like that, to have actual meat, unless the person has some issue with dietary issues or whatever that they can't have. Okay.
Should ladies also wash?
Yes. Ladies should wash for the seuda and have meat. Yes. The only difference between men and women as far as the seuda is really the alcohol consumption. The post can bring down, if a woman wants, she could have a little bit of wine or whatever, but it's not the same mitzvah as the men, and even the mitzvah of the men, most men are not really necessarily doing it the right way. But that's the main difference. Otherwise, everything is the same. You have to say al hanisim on during Birkat Hamazon. The halacha with al hanisim is, if you forget it, which is very likely because it's not a common thing to be said, and Birkat Hamazon is something that a person is used to saying all the time, it's very easy to skip. So if a person skipped al hanisim, you can go back as long as you didn't say Hashem's name in the next bracha. So the next bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, I think it's Al Haaretz or Al Hamazon, I think it's. If you said Hashem's name, then you don't go back. But before you said Hashem's name, you could go back to repeat Al Hanisim. If a person said Hashem's name, you finish the bracha, you go ahead. So you could still make up Al Hanisim. There's a way to make it up. At the end of Birkat Hamazon, when you finish with the Harachamans, before the last part at the end, after you say Harachaman hu yita torato va'ahavato, etc., after that one, you can say Harachaman hu ya'aseh imanu nisim v'niflot keshem she'asa l'avotinu b'ayim v'ayim b'zman hazeh, and then Bimei, Mordechai v'Esther, b'Shoshana b'Yura, etc. Some Sidurim might have it, some not. It's going to be hard to remember, but you can make it into a Harachaman. That's the way to do it if you forget. So that's pretty much the culmination of Hilchot Purim, just in a nutshell. I'll share with you one midrash. I spoke about this in the past. I don't know if anybody here was there when I spoke about it in the past. If so, it may be a bit of a repeat. But there's a midrash that brings down that basically tells you the background story of what was going on in Shamayim during the Purim story. The midrash says that at the time when the Jews went to the party of Achashverosh, after being advised not to by Mordechai and by the other Rabbanim, the Jews went and they got involved in things that they shouldn't have got involved in. They got involved in some promiscuity and etc. And the midrash says in Shamayim there was a decree to annihilate all of the Jews. And Eliyahu Navi in Shamayim heard about this. He went to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, asking them, begging them. He's saying, listen, there's a decree that everybody is supposed to be destroyed. You have to do something. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov said, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. They sinned. They got themselves into this. Look at what they did. They were advised not to go. They didn't listen. They didn't listen to Mordechai. They went. We can't do anything about it. He goes to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu says, is there any tzaddik over there? Eliyahu Navi says, yeah, Mordechai had tzaddik. He's down there. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, so tell him to pray, and etc. And Eliyahu Navi tells Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, but the problem is that there's a decree, and the decree has already been sealed. Hashem made a decree, he sealed it. There's no way to undo it now. So even if he prays, how is he going to undo it? So Moshe Rabbeinu asks him, he says, is this seal, is it sealed with blood, or is it sealed with teat, which is like some like mortar, cement. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, Eliyahu Navi says, no, it's not with blood. It's sealed with teeth. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, if that's the case, you can break the decree. Don't worry about it. And obviously we know the Jews did tshuva. Mordechai called for days of tshuva. They did tshuva, and they were saved. So there's a story that accompanies this midrash, that one time a poor man went to the Rav Chaim Volozhiner asking for tzedakah, and Rav Chaim gave him some money, and he said, if I tell you something you never heard before, will you give me some extra donation? So Rav Chaim said, sure. So the man says, he tells him this midrash, and Rav Chaim says, yeah, I know this midrash. But the man tells Rav Chaim, I want to ask you, do you know where in the psukim this is alluded to? If you look at a pasuk in the Megillah, where can you show me where this midrash is hinted to? So Chaim thinks, he says, I don't know. So the guy says, and listen, this is so amazing. The pasuk says, Imal hamelech tov yikatev la'abedam. If it's good in the eyes of the king, yikatev, you should write la'abedam, to destroy them. Hamelech means Hashem. So im hamelech tov, if it's good in the eyes of the king, yikatev, write this decree. La'abedam means to destroy them, but if you break up the word, it's lo bedam. La'abedam, lo bedam. Write it, but not in blood. So what's the idea of this decree being written in blood versus cement? What's the idea? So the Mefarshim explain, I saw this in a sefer, I don't remember the name of the sefer, it was a year or two ago. He brings down such a beautiful idea. He says that the idea is that blood is something that's internal. Your blood is you. The pasuk says, "Adam hu hanefesh." A person's blood is them. It's what they are. It's their DNA. But cement is something that's external. If you get cement on you, you could wash it off. But blood is always in you. You can't. If you take out your blood, you're dead. Right? Cement is something that's just external. It's there for the external. It's there to put structures together and whatever. But it's not really the essence of the individual. So when Moshe Rabbeinu was asking Eliyahu Navi, is this decree written in blood or in cement? What he was asking is, if the decree was written in cement, that means that the Jews were doing averot, but it was external. It wasn't really them. Them going to Achashverosh's Seuda and, they fell for the pressure. They did things they weren't supposed to do. Not that it's an excuse, but it's not them. The averot that they were doing doesn't define them. It's not really who they are. But if it was written with blood, that means that the actions that they were doing really defines who they are. So the idea is that Eliyahu Navi was saying that it's written in cement. Their sins weren't really defining them. It's not really who they are. I think it's a very important idea. It's like a theme that you see throughout different mitzvot in Purim, that Purim is also, by the way, you should know, Purim is a day of teshuvah. They bring down the Roshei Tevot of Purim, Pei Vav Reish Yud Mem. Pei Vav stands for Pesach v'Shavuot, the two holidays. Pesach v'Sukkot, the two holidays that have to do with Yetziat Mitzrayim. Right? Sukkot is the huts that they sat in when they were leaving Mitzrayim, or the clouds, and Pesach is Yetziat Mitzrayim. So Purim represents Pesach v'Sukkot, right? Reish represents Rosh Hashanah. Yud is Yom Kippurim. And then Mem is Matan Torah, which is Shavuot. So all the holidays are included in Purim. Purim is very multifaceted. But you see also Purim is connected to the Yud of Purim was Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, because Purim is a day of atonement as well. Like we fast on before Purim. But the idea of this type of teshuvah and showing Hashem that what we do during the year, it doesn't define us. We make mistakes, but it's not really us. I think that's also the idea of wearing costumes on Purim, showing Hashem what you see during the year, what we may show ourselves as during the year, doesn't define what's really, really deep inside of us. Really, really deep inside of us, we all want to do the right thing, even though sometimes we're making mistakes and doing the wrong thing, but that's not really us. And the same thing with drinking. Drinking is something that brings the real inside of a person out, so to speak. It's all the same theme. So that's a very, very important theme of Purim. Okay, so we'll end here, B'ezras Hashem.